Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to a video that is part double review, part brand showcase, part exploratory investigation. San Martin has a new sister brand, Jianghun. Same parent company, same factory. Now, if you've ever bought a San Martin, that should raise an eyebrow, because if you've ever bought a San Martin, you know that they make arguably the best finished watches you can buy for under $500 or $600 US. And you're not paying $500 or $600 for them, you're paying $200 or $300 for them. Now, a couple of things before we go on. Firstly, these watches were sent to me by the brand. I do not have to send them back. I will therefore, of course, leave a link to their website in the description of the video. Secondly, I'm not really into the designs myself. They contacted me earlier this year when they released their first model, the JH0101, I think it was in May. I had a look and I politely declined. They contacted me again a couple of months ago, told me they were releasing the JH0201. And they told me they were a San Martin sister brand. Could I please reconsider? And this time I said yes. At least we know the quality is guaranteed, even if the styling is not. So I have declared my bias then. As always, if you feel my words cannot be trusted, then turn the sound down, look at the pretty pictures and make up your own mind. I'm not going to roast these watches. Instead, I'm going to do pretty much what I normally do. I'm going to look at them in terms of dimensions and specifications, quality and price, so that if you like the look of them, you know whether or not they are decent watches or not, whether or not they represent good value for money or not. Let's get on with it. And let's start with a brief look at the brand, or at least a brief look at what the brand has decided to tell us about itself on their website. I guess there are two obvious things that differentiate Jianghun from their parent company. The first is that they are proudly Chinese. That is reflected in the brand name, the logo, and the inspiration behind both of their models so far, and the fact that they tell you they are proudly Chinese. A lot of Chinese brands try and obfuscate their country of origin. Clearly there is a different tactic at work here today. And frankly, it's great to see that for a change. The second differentiating factor is the design of the watches. San Martin now make a range of originals, but that hasn't always been the case. They started off very much doing one-for-one, admittedly high-quality one-for-ones of Swiss luxury watches mostly. I don't think anyone will claim any more than the merest passing resemblance between the two watches we're going to look at today and anything coming out of Switzerland. They also sell direct. They don't sell through AliExpress or Amazon as it currently stands. So if you want one, you have to buy one from their website. Again, another little point of differentiation, just pulling them away from that AliExpress sphere. All right then, let's start with a look at watch number one. Watch number one, as mentioned, is the JH0101, aka the war drum, because apparently it was inspired by an ancient Chinese war drum spotted by the brand owner on a visit to an ancient village or something. The origin story may be proudly Chinese, but it's just as hokey as any other I've ever heard. It was launched, I believe, in May this year. Mine came nicely packaged, branded outer box, small carry pouch, hang tag, envelope with some information and warranty card, envelope with screwdriver and spring bar removal tool as well. Price on this one is $299 US. They're available in a range of 4 different colours, all the same price, all with really perfectly colour matched leather straps. You know I love to pigeonhole watches, and I know that you love to pigeonhole watches as well. But frankly, I have no idea what category this one fits into other than the general category of wristwatch. The case, the lugs, the crown, the hands, the indices, all very unusual in isolation, even more unusual in combination. Dimensions on this one are 42mm in diameter, 13.75mm thick though, which is a bit chunky. Lug to lug of 49, lug width is 20 though. Weight, as supplied on the leather strap, is 103 grams. Crystal is double dome sapphire with 3 layers of AR undercoating. The water resistance rating is 200 meters, and the movement in the back of this one is a Seiko NH38, which you cannot see because of one of the watch's highlights. For me anyway, the Caseback. That is a cracking looking caseback. It's an ancient Chinese tiger drawing in the middle. It's nicely embossed, but it remains smooth and comfortable. It also has the usual spec sheet on there, and as you can see, this one manages 200 meters of water resistance, despite the fact that the caseback is screw on rather than screw down. And it's a very unusual case. Apart from the caseback and the lugs, it's made using a single piece of 316L stainless steel. So rather than having a separate bezel, the bezel is part of the case. Wait, does that mean the watch has no bezel? It only has a case? Arabics 1 to 12 are then etched and paint filled, with 12, 3, 6 and 9 being slightly larger than the others, and the bezel, or uppercase depending on which way you went there, features high polished grooves between those Arabics. The drilled lugs are perfectly tubular and look like they are fabricated and then fitted into the case rather than being CNC machined as part of the original case structure itself, if you see what I mean. And then we have the onion crown, an onion so large you could pickle it and sell it in a jar with a couple dozen of its friends. It is very smooth though, and very easy to grip regardless. Plus, it's also nicely recessed into the case. The leather strap is the best leather strap I've ever seen on a Chinese watch. Stylistically, again, it may not be to everyone's taste, but let me assure you the quality is excellent and it smells fantastic. It's colour matched perfectly to the dial and features really nice high quality hardware, but no quick release spring bars. I guess though the fact that those tubular lugs are drilled kind of makes up for that. The dial and hands are also unique. It's a sandwich dial, the lower section of which is fully loomed. You'll see that in just a minute. Indices are part of the upper dial section and seem to float on the lower dial section like tiny islands off the Dubai coastline. Markers at the 3, 6 and 9 are orange circles rather than brown circles, and the marker at the 12 is an orange triangle rather than a circle at all. The all brushed silver minute hand is fairly conventional. The second hand is one of those San Martin super long ones with a massive counterbalance, but the hour hand is unlike anything I've seen before. If we're used to talking about sword hands and arrowheads, then perhaps this hour hand is an axe or even a mace. Overall, I think the dial is really interesting, but the proportion of the handset just throws it all off a little bit. Decent lume though, as you'd expect from a San Martin product. There is a little bit of orange lume on the 4 points of the compass, if you will, and then C3 everywhere else, and a decent amount of it. When I turn the speed up on this one, it is just about all hanging on come the end of my test. On wrist, it may look unconventional, but it wears, well, slightly unconventional, if I'm being honest. The strap is really nice, but it will require quite a lot of breaking in because that upper section is thick, it's thoroughly well embossed, and those slightly unusual lugs, they wear better than it looks like they wear, if that makes sense, because of the angle, but yeah, it's still a big chunky watch that very much sits on top of the wrist. I did see that they offer this one with 2 different lengths of strap though, which is great. So if you have a big old wrist, you don't have to dump what is an excellent stock strap. For an extra $10, you can get a longer stock strap instead. So that's the JH0101 then, and I guess it kind of sets the tone for the brand. Proudly Chinese, inspired by an ancient war drum and determined to plough its own paddy field. $300 US though for a Seiko powered watch on a leather strap is okay when you compare it to the big brands, but nothing special when you compare it to, I don't know, what about San Martin maybe? Moving on to watch number 2 then, oddly enough the JH0201, although this one has a sobriquet as well, that being Deep Challenger. This one is available either in a 3-hand plus date version with a Seiko NH35 and a relief style diving bezel, or an NH34 powered GMT with a 24-hour bezel. Prices are $330 or $370 depending. And this one is even bigger at 43mm in diameter and 14mm thick with a lug to lug again of 49. 22mm between the lugs this time, and as supplied on the bracelet, size for me anyway, it weighs in at a not inconsiderable 178 grams. Because this is a Deep Challenger. It has 300 meters of water resistance, double dome sapphire crystal, and as discussed, a Seiko NH movement. If the caseback was one of my favourite parts of the war drum, it's one of my least favourite parts of the Deep Challenger. Rather than an attractive ancient tiger, we have a shit-looking cartoon submarine. What was wrong with the tiger? I like the tiger, and I want the tiger back on this one as well. Anyway, I said it wasn't a roast, but I think that particular moan is more than justified. The case here is somewhat more conventional. It's big, it's chunky, but it's nicely made, as you would expect. And it's a seriously chunky bezel, but because it's a San Martin product, the bezel action is fantastic, and there is a rather interesting crown with the Jianghun logo in a molded element on the tip of it. The bracelet is the most interesting part of this watch though, and I must admit, I rather like it. Those are full-size single links with two little articulated bridge links running between them. All links have the same finish, so all a brushed upper surface but with high polished edges. Not only does it look good, but it's comfortable as well. Female end links help offset that 49mm lug to lug, and it has a standard ratcheting clasp but with an inlaid logo and twin high polished ridges to match those articulated bracelet links. Moving on to the dial and hands. The handset here is essentially the same as found on the war drum, but high polish rather than brush. Now the prominent applied indices at 12, 6 and 9 are apparently one element removed from the brand's logo, and there is a noticeable but attractive horizontal wave pattern with texture on the main dial surface. The chunky minute markings around the outer edge of the dial mimic the chunky notches in the bezel, and they're fully loomed, as you'll see in just a second. There is a framed date complication at the 3 rather than the 6, but at least it's colour matched. However, I'm not sure what's quite going on with that frame because it doesn't match the index at 9. In fact, that little extra wedge portion doesn't match anything else on the dial, so it just looks a bit odd. The Lume is great though, again C3 and again lots of it. But the weird looking date frame looks just as odd after dark as it does during the day, making me question for a second time what they were doing by adding the loomed element to it. On wrist, this one actually wears surprisingly nicely. It's chunky but it's well proportioned, and the bracelet is my favourite component of the entire watch. I guess as watches generally trend downwards in size, 43s don't come along all that often anymore from small brands, but there's definitely still a market for this size of watch. I'm just not sure that market is quite ready for this watch in particular. While I'm moaning, the clasp on this one is uncharacteristically sharp on the bottom edge. It doesn't affect the watch on wrist, but it doesn't make it feel all that pleasant off wrist. So that then is the JH0201, the Deep Challenger. Again, like the JH0101, the quality is there and there are a number of interesting design elements. I'm just not sure that they work in combination with each other. And the price of this one puts it up against approximately a gazillion other NH powered micro dive watches, including several from, you guessed it, San Martin. So where does that leave us then? Well, San Martin quality, original Chinese design, priced somewhere above what you'd expect from AliExpress. You can see what they're trying to do with this brand. They're trying to make it more proudly Chinese, and they're trying to distance themselves from AliExpress. The war drum is arguably the more interesting of the two. There's definitely potential in a case shape like that. The dial, the hands are high quality, as is that leather strap, but you're gonna need a pretty big wrist to pull it off, especially with those unusual lugs. The Deep Challenger is literally and figuratively swimming in deeper waters. And unlike the war drum, which fully leaned into its Chinese heritage, the diver almost seems to pull back away from it. And if that was one of the brand's USPs in the first place, then surely you want the tiger on the caseback and not the cartoon submarine. So there you have it. That is my take on Jianghun as an emerging brand and my take on their first two watches. But what did you think? What's your take? Are you one of the 60 million overseas Chinese who has been crying out for a proudly Chinese micro brand with cultural references for you to buy and enjoy? Or will you shrug your shoulders and buy a San Martin instead? Well done for making it all the way to the end of the video. You can guess what I'm going to suggest you watch next, can't you? That's right, 2 videos filled with San Martins. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you again in the next one.